So those are the reasons for making a will in Spain, and all of them very good reasons, as we've explained. What happens in Spain if you don't make a will? Let's say that you have not made a will in England and you've not made a will in Spain. So what's going to happen in Spain in that case?
Well, if you have not made a will in England, which is very unlikely, people tend to plan their affairs on time and at least plan their affairs in the UK, for example. If they do not sign a will here...
Your clients must be better organised than mine.
If you don't sign a will in Spain, then whatever will you got signed back home, it can be used in Spain, is legal as well. As we mentioned, it's just that they ask for lots of documents and translation of those documents which are in English, and they need to be translated here in Spain. But the process is very long and costly process. If you do not have a will signed in Spain or in England, that means arranging lots of paperwork back home, and then, as we said, sending all that paperwork already translated and legalized here in Spain. So if you have a will in place at home, but you don't have a Spanish will, the processes can be long and expensive. Imagine how much longer and how much more expensive it can be if there is no will signed at all.
Yes. And so, for all of those reasons, the sensible thing is to make a will here in Spain. And that can be a very simple will here in Spain, doesn't it? If you've only got, say, a house in Spain and a bank account in Spain, you don't need to do anything complicated here in Spain. If you want to give money to charity, if you want to make provision for your nephews and your nieces, if you want to set up a trust for the local cats or something like that, then you can do all that back home.
That's right.
And leave your property in Spain on a very simple will, dealing only with that property.
That's correct, because we have to think about here that there are some restrictions under the Spanish law as to what you can write down in your will. Obviously, the will is the instructions that what you want to happen with your assets when you pass away. Depending on your national law, then the restrictions will be wider, or even if we're talking about, for example, UK law, it gives you total freedom to dispose of your estates. But as we say, keep it simple for Spain. Keep your assets in Spain quite simple, and that will make things a lot more easier for your heirs to deal with inheritance.
I think we just need to explain that a little bit more, because if you here, a Spanish person, you do not have the freedom to give your assets away when you die just as you please.
That's correct.
There are certain of your relatives who will have automatic rights to inherit a portion of your estate.
That's correct.
And without going into all the details, typically 2/3 of your assets will be tied up in that way.
That's right.
And you only have the freedom to give away 1/3 to your next door neighbor or your best friend or to the cats. So that's why there is a difference between what's happening in Spain and what's happening in your own country. Now, you may come from a country where they also impose restrictions on who can inherit what, but you may come from a country where there's complete freedom. You have a choice, don't you, when you make a will, to say which law is going to govern your will.
That's correct. You can either choose the law of your nationality. For example, if you have a property in Spain and you know, because obviously when you sign a will or when you're planning to sign a will, you need to get advice on this from your lawyer. That's the first thing you need to do, to plan your will accordingly. And in that case, if you talk to your lawyer first, he can tell you, well, if you're resident in Spain, you can choose the law of Spain because this is the country where you normally live in. But what about if you don't want to live, as we spoke earlier, 2/3 to your children? You can choose the law of your nationality if you were an UK resident.
And indeed, whichever country you come from.
Oh, yes.
Most people who are, even when they're living permanently in Spain, most people choose the law of the nationality,
Of the
don't they? Because
nationality.
they're comfortable with it.
That's right. This is what they understand.
And many of them also still have assets in their home country, and therefore it's just convenient to have them all dealt with in the same way.
That's correct, yes.
Yes. When you make that choice will be stated in your will.
Yes, it will be stated in your will,
Yes.
precisely.
But you do need to, I know we've said this already, but you do need to understand that if you choose to use Spanish law, then it does mean that only a third of your assets can be left as you please, and the rest will go to your children mainly, or to your wife and your children. And that is a particular problem, isn't it, if you're in a second marriage or a third marriage, because your children of your first marriage will have priority over your new wife.
But as we say, if you have another will in your country, then you can make provisions for the rest of the children who come from a separate marriage
Exactly.
in the other will.
Exactly.
And you have to make sure that at least some of the assets that you have in Spain would go to the other. If you have more. If you have children coming from more than one marriage, you can make provisions for some of them in your Spanish will and provisions for some of them in your English or a will that you made in any other country.
But the most important thing here for most people is that when you're thinking of, first of all, you should think about making a will. Secondly, you must discuss which law is going to govern that will, and your lawyer here in Spain will be able to talk to you about that. If it's a complicated case, like you've had 11 marriages and 15 children, they may need to go back and talk to your lawyer in your own country to work out the best solution.
That's right, to work out the best way to do this.
Don't delay making a will just because you're frightened about that.
That's right.
Okay, so that's what happens to your stuff when you die. But the other issue is what is the tax situation when you die. And again, we're not going to deal in detail about tax in this video because we have a separate guide and video about that. But the Spanish tax authorities will want to take some tax from you on the assets that are located in Spain.
That's right.
And it's important when you're making your will that you understand that depending on who you leave the assets to, the amount of tax you pay will be different.
That's correct.
Because in many countries that isn't the case, of course. In many countries they take the tax out of the whole estate at whatever percentage applies. But here they take the tax from the individuals who inherit. And some people will pay effectively no tax at all on the inheritance, and some will pay 35% tax on the inheritance. So huge difference in tax depending on who you leave your assets to.
Yes, that's why it is important to plan all this with your lawyer or your tax advisor first, so that they can give you the right advice. Because close relatives will have an allowance; they'll pay much less than if you were to leave part of your inheritance to, let's say, one of your nephews. The more distance the relative is, the more this person will pay.
Yes.
And a spouse will pay less or nothing, depending as well on the value of the inheritance.
Yes. And so for most people, the one that really catches them out is that if they are living with a woman to whom they're not married, or a man to whom they're not married, that's a disaster, because here in Spain, that is treated that there is no relationship at all, and you pay tax at the maximum possible rate.
That's right, that's correct.
But as I say, we'll deal with that in a separate guide, and we suggest if you're interested in the tax situation, then please do consult our guide to inheritance tax in Spain, and also to inheritance tax planning, and both of those are linked to on this video.